Good evening, everyone. It is my extreme honor to represent my dad on his behalf as a new inductee into the NY State Baseball Hall of Fame. First, I want to thank our friends and family who have come from across the country to celebrate this evening. I also want to take a quick moment to thank Tom Clark, who is sitting at this table with my mom, who's been a longtime friend and advocate of my dad, and he made the initial nomination for him to be inducted into the Hall of Fame. I also want to thank Rennie LaRue and the committee for making this incredible night happen and having my dad inducted with these incredible honorees. Now, one thing I can tell you from the start is that I cannot tell stories like my dad or Cleon Jones. I lovingly call him Uncle Cleon, but they could go on for days and days and days, so I'm going to need some notes, so bear with me. My dad and Uncle Cleon, who was inducted last year, had an extremely close relationship. The boys from Mobile attended middle school together, played on the same team in college at Grambling State University, and ended up playing side by side for the Mets during the 1969 World Series. My dad would have been so incredibly humbled to receive this honor, so I wanted to make sure I brought a piece of him here tonight. He was one of those superstitious baseball players who followed routines. He loved to wear a red silk shirt when he traveled. So I have some bright red nails, and I wore his World Series ring. My dad passed away when I was 12 years old, and although I never saw him play during his prime, it was the stories from the fans that brought him to life. He knew his impact on the community and how much his fans loved him as a New York Met. Whether they imitated him when they were younger by patting their glove like he did or mimicking his batting stance, he listened to every single story, signed every card, bat, and t-shirt. I mean, literally just last night we went to a Broadway play and someone told me they idolized my dad more than Superman and Batman, so that's what they did. My dad's love for baseball came at a young age. His mom actually wanted him to be a preacher, but he knew that sports was his passion. What many don't know is when he went to Grambling State University, he went there on a football scholarship. The college president, who was also the baseball coach, encouraged him to try out. He was initially placed in the infield, but he found his sweet spot, as we all know, in the outfield. So it was his baseball coach at Grambling that taught him how to make that deep pocket in his mitt. Also, another fun fact that you may not know is that after his freshman year of college, he negotiated his first contract of $60,000 with the Cleveland Indians. Now, that doesn't sound like a lot of money right now, but at the time, he was the highest paid rookie in the league. And it was more money than his family could have ever imagined, and he wanted to negotiate more and more, and his dad was like, "You better stop and take that money." But it was there where he became best friends with Minnesota Twins great Jim Mudcat Grant. My Uncle Mud told me he was assigned as my dad's mentor, met him on the first day of training camp, and he said my dad showed up in an oversized seersucker suit his parents bought him with a red tie and red socks. See the red theme here? And my Uncle Mud said, "Oh no, I cannot be seen in public with you looking like that. We have to take you to the store, get you some new clothes." But he took him under his wing, and he taught my dad the ins and outs of the game. When my dad was traded to the White Sox, it's where his career started to gain some traction. It's where he won Rookie of the Year and his first Gold Glove. Now, my dad played at a time during segregation. Black players were heckled, and their talent was constantly questioned. At times, he wasn't able to stay in the same hotel as his teammates. But he built bonds that lasted a lifetime, and one was with pitcher Tommy John. Their team was traveling for an away game, and my dad wasn't able to stay at the team hotel. Tommy decided he wasn't going to leave my dad by himself. The pair couldn't find a hotel where a white and black player could stay in the same room. So they rented a car. Now, I don't know all the details of this night, but I'm going to share with you what they share with me. So once they got this rental car, they went on the search for some chicken. And as the story goes, they found a restaurant that served buckets and buckets of chicken. They ate that chicken in the car and slept in there until their game the next day. They ate so much chicken, in fact, that when they went to get their bags out of the doors of the back seat of the car, chicken bones fell out of the car. Now, this story isn't about the absurd amount of chicken they ate, but about their friendship, about how they didn't want to let each other go, and about their trust. My dad loved his teammates. He respected them. They respected each other, no matter what their color was, and that transcended through every team. His recently inducted Hall of Fame coach, Gil Hodges, knew that my dad was the missing piece for the winning team for the New York Mets and actively recruited him. And let me tell you, my dad loved Gil Hodges. In 1968, my dad was up to bat during spring training and was beamed in the head by Bob Gibson. He left the game with a concussion and wasn't sure if he was able to muster up the confidence to get back in the game and have a successful season. But it was Gil that kept him as leadoff hitter and in the lineup through the rest of the year. That season was a career highlight for my dad. He hit the longest home run in Shea Stadium's history. And played phenomenally during Game 3 of the World Series, where he hit a leadoff home run and made the 2 most memorable catches in World Series history. Now, players during that game said, on both teams, my dad was all over the place. Wherever the ball was, that's where my dad was. And my dad said, it was like something out of a movie, but I knew I could do it. I knew I could make those catches. It was the first time his parents from Alabama traveled to New York to see him play. So it was just so special for him. That season, he became the first black player to win another Gold Glove in both leagues. When my mom and I lost my dad, our entire world was turned upside down. We had to learn how to move through life as a unit of 2, but with the support of his friends, teammates, and the New York Mets, our Mets family, we've been able to keep his legacy alive for the last 21 years. You all know his amazing baseball highlights, but after his passing, my mom and I made a commitment to continue his work and legacy. We established the Tommie Agee Foundation with his best friend and Mets legend in his own right, Jimmy Plummer. And we held annual golf outings and raised over $250,000 over 15 years. Now, when he wasn't doing card signings or going to Super Bowls without me, we had some pretty special moments. When I was little, my dad was this larger-than-life figure. Everyone loved him, but I couldn't put my finger on what this was. I just want to go to baseball games. I want to go to the supermarket without being stopped. I want to go to the mall. But I didn't know what this larger-than-life figure was. But he loved connecting with people. He opened up a lounge with my Uncle Cleon, and that's where my parents met and fell in love. And now there is a state-of-the-art middle school in honor of his name that sits on that side. Now, I don't have a lot of baseball stories, so I'm going to tell you a little bit about my relationship with my dad. He loved to cook. He loved old cowboy westerns. He'd watch them every morning before he went to school. He was obsessed with Matlock, In the Heat of the Night, and Murder, She Wrote. He'd sit on the edge of the bed, peel oranges, and watch SportsCenter with Stuart Scott religiously. But he also loved the game of golf, and he loved it so much that he would practice his drivers in our living room. My mom would come home and she'd say, "Why are there holes in my carpet? Why is there a hole in my coffee table?" And he'd be like, "Well, I've got a golf tournament in the morning." Last month, I traveled to Tanzania, Africa, and reached the summit of Mount Kilimanjaro, the tallest mountain in Africa. As you can imagine, a lot of the time I spent by myself, and it was an 8-day climb to the top. I know this sounds a bit crazy, but while I was up there, I asked my dad, I said, "What do you want me to say?" And I heard his voice tell me, "I wrote it." And I said, "Oh my God, I must be falling out from altitude sickness. What do you mean you wrote it?" Like my Uncle Cleon, my dad never wrote anything down. In my mind, I was like, oh, what are you talking about? What are you talking about? Then I remembered my mom and I were going through some old picture books a few years ago, and I remembered seeing some notes he had scribbled down on 3 pieces of paper. As soon as I got home from my trip, I started looking through my phone. I found the 3 pieces of paper from a picture I took in 2015. They were from a hotel pad at the Mountain Brook Inn Hotel in Birmingham, Alabama. He wrote them as he was getting ready to be inducted into the Alabama Sports Hall of Fame in 1998. So to close out this speech, I want to leave you with words directly from him and his notes. He wrote, "Congratulate inductees, introduce sisters, nieces, nephews, cousins, wife, daughter, friends." Then he wrote, "Name of parents, Joe and Carrie." He then wrote, "First challenge, Dubuque, Iowa, from Mobile to Dubuque." And he listed it as a, quote, all-white town. The Indians had a minor league team in Dubuque, so that's why he wrote that on those notes. He then wrote, Burlington to North Carolina. He said, "Follow your dreams. Treat people as they treat you. Think positive, and always remember your solid rock foundation." I'll end with what was on the 3rd piece of paper. He said, "Seeing parents being treated less than citizens, now being elected into the Hall of Fame, is right up there with winning the World Series, Gold Glove, and Rookie of the Year." What I know is that my dad loved his family. He loved serving his community, he loved his teammates, and he loved baseball. He would have been so incredibly humbled to be here. Thank you for this prestigious honor and continuing to remember Tommie Agee's legacy.